She fired a black janitor for asking for 1 day off in 9 years. Then she saw him dining with her billionaire father. The office is glass and chrome, 60 stories above Atlanta. Morning sun cutting harsh angles across the conference table. The woman in the designer suit is still talking. Her voice sharp, clipped, corporate. I'm terminating your employment effective immediately. The janitor stands across from her in his gray uniform, dark hands resting at his sides, salt and pepper beard, weathered face, 52 years of gravity in his posture. He doesn't flinch, doesn't argue, just asks one question. Are you certain? Something about the way he says it makes the hotel manager in the corner shift uncomfortably. There's no anger in the janitor's voice, no pleading, just calm, the kind of calm that comes from somewhere deep, somewhere earned. The woman's eyes narrow. She's used to fear. Apologies, begging, she gets none of it. Security will escort you out, she says. The janitor nods once, turns toward the door. But as he moves just for a second, the executive chef in the back of the room sees something. The way the janitor's hands hang, the precision in his posture, the controlled breathing of someone who's held power before. The chef frowns, leans forward. Because those aren't the hands of a man who spent his life mopping floors. 12 hours later, the woman who fired him walks into a soul food diner on the west side. She's there to meet her father, the billionaire, the hotel magnate who built half of Atlanta. And sitting 3 booths away, calm as ever, is the janitor she destroyed that morning. Her father is crying, holding a plate of food like it's a sacrament. And when he sees her, he says 5 words that shatter everything she thought she knew. This is Elijah St. Jean. If you believe that true power isn't given, it's earned, stay with this story. Because what happens next will prove that the people we overlook are often the ones who see us most clearly. Before we begin, hit subscribe and tell me in the comments, have you ever been underestimated because of your job? But to understand how a janitor became the most powerful man in the room, we need to go back 3 weeks to the night shift that felt like every other night shift, until it wasn't. The Grandview Hotel lobby glowed like a jewel box at 11 p.m. Crystal chandeliers threw soft light across marble floors, polished to a mirror shine. Leather armchairs sat in perfect clusters. The air smelled faintly of expensive cologne and fresh lilies. Elijah Cross pushed his cleaning cart past the front desk with the same steady rhythm he'd kept for 9 years. Gray uniform pressed, work boots quiet on stone. His dark hands rested light on the cart handle, movements economical, practiced. He was 52, but moved like a man who'd learned long ago not to waste motion. The night security guard, Marcus, nodded as Elijah passed. Evening, Cross. Marcus, one word, that was how Elijah worked, efficient, present, invisible in the way good custodians learn to be. He stopped at the 3rd floor supply closet and checked inventory. Towels stacked neat. Cleaning solutions alphabetized. He made a note on his clipboard they'd need more bleach by Thursday. His handwriting was surprisingly elegant for a man who mopped floors. Down in the service corridor, he found his crew already working. 5 people, all of them reliable. Teresa handled the conference rooms. Miguel took the gym. Donna did the executive suites. James and Perry split the restaurants. How's the 3rd floor? Elijah asked Teresa. Clean. Meeting ran late, but they're gone now. Good. Thanks. He moved between them like a conductor, quiet but aware. When Perry's vacuum belt snapped, Elijah had a replacement from the cart in 30 seconds. When Donna mentioned a weird smell in suite 3312, Elijah went up himself, found a forgotten takeout container behind the curtain, removed it without comment. David, the hotel manager, caught him near the lobby elevators around midnight. David was younger, maybe 40, always wore ties even during night shifts. He smiled when he saw Elijah. 9 years this month, right? Elijah nodded. That's right. Never a complaint, never late. You're a good man, Cross. Just doing the job. David clapped his shoulder and moved on. Elijah stood there a moment, alone in the hallway, staring at his reflection in the polished elevator doors. Salt and pepper hair cropped close, lean face, dark eyes that didn't give much away. He returned to his cart and kept moving. The staff break room sat tucked behind the kitchen, small but clean. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead. A microwave, a fridge, a table with mismatched chairs. And in the corner, surrounded by library books, sat Zoe, 9 years old. Bright eyes, natural hair pulled into 2 puffs that bounced when she moved. She looked up from her homework as Elijah walked in. Hey, Dad. Hey, baby, how's the math? Done. Can I show you something? She pushed aside the workbook and pulled forward a cookbook. Not a kid's cookbook, a real one. pages marked with sticky notes, margins filled with her careful handwriting. She opened to a recipe for griot with pickles. I've been reading about this. It's Haitian pork with pickled vegetables. The recipe says you marinate it overnight and then fry it twice. Is that normal? Frying it twice? Elijah's jaw tightened just slightly. He pulled out a chair and sat. Why you asking? Because I want to make it. For the competition next month. The junior one at the Culinary Institute, remember? You signed the form. I remember. So is it normal? He looked at the page. His eyes moved across the ingredients list with a speed that didn't match his job title. Yeah, first fry cooks it through. Second fry gets it crispy. It's technique. How do you know that? Elijah closed the book gently. Just stuff you pick up. You gonna make this? I want to. It's Mama's recipe, right? You said she made it. Something shifted in Elijah's face. Not much. Just a tightness around his eyes. She did. She was good at it too. Zoe leaned forward. Will you help me practice? You don't need my help. You got good instincts. Just follow the recipe. But you could tell me if I'm doing it wrong. You won't do it wrong. Zoe frowned, the way kids do when they know they're being deflected but don't know why. She opened her mouth to push harder, but Elijah stood, kissed the top of her head. Keep reading. I gotta check the West Wing. He left before she could ask again. The night stretched long and quiet. Elijah moved through the hotel like a ghost, restocking, wiping, straightening. The rhythm soothed him. No decisions, no creativity, just the work. At 4 a.m., he paused in the empty ballroom, staring at the chandelier overhead. Thousands of crystals catching the dim safety lights. He stood very still, breathing slow, like a man remembering something he'd sworn to forget. Then he picked up his cart and kept moving. 6 a.m. came soft and gray. Elijah clocked out, collected Zoe from the break room, and walked her toward the lobby exit. The morning shift was arriving, front desk staff in crisp uniforms, managers with coffee cups, the city waking up outside the glass doors. They stepped onto Peachtree Street. The air was cool. Traffic just starting to build. Elijah carried Zoe's backpack over one shoulder, the cookbooks tucked inside. They walked toward the bus stop in silence, 2 blocks. Then Zoe looked up at him, her small hand in his. Dad? Yeah? Did you ever want to be a chef? Elijah's face went very still. His eyes stayed forward. His grip on her hand didn't change, but something in his shoulders drew tight, like a man bracing against old weight. Once, he said quietly. Long time ago. Zoe waited for more, but her father said nothing else. They stood at the bus stop together, the city humming around them, and he stared at the horizon like a man who'd left something behind he could never retrieve. 1 week later, Elijah stood outside Carolyn Ashford Pierce's office on the 60th floor, waiting. The hallway was all glass and steel. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked downtown Atlanta, the city sprawling out in every direction. Buildings stacked like toys beneath them. Morning sun cut sharp angles across polished marble. Everything gleamed. Elijah wore his gray uniform, clean but faded, his employee ID clipped to his chest. He held a single piece of paper in his dark hands, a time-off request form, the first he'd filled out in 9 years. Through the glass wall, he could see Carolyn at her desk, blonde hair pulled back tight. Designer suit the color of steel. She was talking fast, her tablet propped in front of her, 3 department heads arranged in chairs across from her like students awaiting judgment. David, the hotel manager, stood near the door. He caught Elijah's eye through the glass and nodded once. Then he opened the door. Ms. Ashford Pierce? Elijah Cross is here. You said 9 o'clock. Carolyn didn't look up. Send him in. Elijah stepped inside. The office smelled like expensive perfume and fresh coffee. The desk was massive, dark wood, not a paper out of place. Behind Carolyn, Atlanta stretched out like a kingdom she ruled from on high. Cross. Make it quick. Her eyes stayed on the tablet. Elijah approached the desk. The department head's operations, housekeeping, HR glanced at him briefly, then away. He was furniture. Part of the machinery. Ma'am, I'm requesting a day off. 3 weeks from now. April 15th. Carolyn's fingers stopped scrolling. She looked up for the first time. Her eyes were pale blue, sharp as glass. A day off. Yes, ma'am. You've been here how long? 9 years. And you've never requested time off before? No, ma'am. She set the tablet down, leaned back in her chair. Something about the way she moved reminded Elijah of a hawk settling on a branch alert, calculating, ready to strike. Why now? My daughter has a cooking competition at the Atlanta Culinary Institute Junior Division. She's been preparing for months. Carolyn's lips pressed into a thin line. April 15th. That's Gala Week. Yes, ma'am. I know it's. Gala Week is non-negotiable. Every department at full capacity. All hands on deck. Elijah's jaw tightened just slightly. It's one day. I can arrange coverage with. Custodial staff don't get personal days for hobbies. The words landed like a slap. Hobbies. As if Zoe's dream was something trivial, something disposable. Elijah's voice stayed level. It's my daughter's competition. She needs me there. Carolyn picked up her tablet again. Her fingers resumed scrolling. Request denied. Anything else? The room went very quiet. The department heads looked at their laps. David shifted his weight near the door, his face tight. Elijah didn't move. Ma'am, with respect, I'm asking you to reconsider. Carolyn's head snapped up. Her eyes narrowed. Excuse me? I've worked here 9 years without missing a shift. I've never been late, never complained. I'm asking for one day. And I'm telling you the answer is no. Her voice sharpened. We have standards here, Cross. Expectations. This hotel doesn't run on sentiment. It runs on discipline. I understand that. Do you? She set the tablet down again, stood. Even in heels, she was shorter than him, but the desk and the height of the office gave her leverage. Because what I'm hearing is that you think your personal life takes priority over the needs of this property, that you think the rules don't apply to you. That's not what I'm saying. Then what are you saying? Elijah's hands tightened on the request form. His voice stayed quiet. I'm saying my daughter has been working toward this for months. It's important to her, and I'd like to be there. We all have families, Cross. We all have obligations. The difference is some of us understand that professionalism means showing up when it's inconvenient. She sat back down, dismissed him with a wave. Get back to work. Or find another job that accommodates your schedule better. The HR manager flinched. David opened his mouth like he might object, but Carolyn's eyes cut to him and he closed it again. Elijah stood there a moment longer, studying her. Something in his gaze made Carolyn shift in her chair just slightly, just enough to betray discomfort. Thank you for your time, he said quietly. He turned and walked out. The door clicked shut behind him. Carolyn picked up her tablet, already scrolling to the next crisis. The health inspection, the review in the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, her father's questions about occupancy rates, 100 fires burning at once. David lingered near the door. Miss Ashford Pierce, if I could just… Not now, David. It's one day. Cross is reliable. We could easily… I said not now. David's mouth pressed into a line. He nodded once and left. Carolyn returned to her screen. The operations director cleared his throat, started talking about linen suppliers, and within 30 seconds, she'd forgotten the janitor entirely. But in the hallway outside, Elijah stood alone by the elevator, staring at the request form in his hands. The paper trembled just slightly, not from fear, from something older, something buried. He folded it once, then slipped it into his pocket and pressed the button for the ground floor. 3 weeks until the competition. 3 weeks until Zoe would stand in front of judges with her mother's recipe and no one there to see her do it. And for the first time in 9 years, Elijah Cross wondered if keeping his head down had been the right choice after all. 2 days later, Elijah stood outside Carolyn's office at 5:30 in the morning. His shift had just ended. The hallway was empty except for a cleaning cart he'd left by the elevator. He'd made a decision during the night. He would ask one more time, not as an employee making a formal request, as a father explaining why it mattered. The door was closed. Light showed underneath. Carolyn was already working. Elijah knocked twice. Come in. He stepped inside. Carolyn sat behind her desk, tablet glowing in front of her, coffee steaming beside it. She looked up, surprised to see him. Cross, it's 5:30. I know, ma'am. I wanted to speak with you before I left. Her eyes narrowed. About the time off request. Yes, ma'am. I already gave you my answer. Elijah's hands hung loose at his sides. His voice stayed calm. I understand that. But I wanted to explain something I didn't say before. Carolyn set down her tablet, leaned back. You have 2 minutes. My daughter's been working on this dish for months. It's her mother's recipe, griot with pickles, Haitian food. Her mother died when Zoe was a baby. She never got to know her. He paused, met Carolyn's eyes. This competition is how she's trying to honor her memory, and I'd like to be there when she does it. Silence filled the office. Outside the windows, Atlanta was just beginning to wake, street lights still glowing against the pale sky. Carolyn's jaw tightened. Your personal situation is unfortunate, but it doesn't change the operational needs of this hotel. I'm not asking you to change those needs. I'm asking for one day. And I'm telling you, no. Her voice sharpened. Do you know what I've been dealing with this week, Cross? A critical health inspection. A scathing review in the Journal-Constitution. My father questioning every decision I make. I don't have time for sob stories about dead wives and cooking competitions. Elijah's hands curled slightly, just enough to betray the anger rising in his chest. I'm not asking for sympathy. I'm asking for fairness. Fairness? Carolyn stood, walked around the desk. You think it's fair that you get special treatment because you have a daughter? Half my staff has children. If I give you a day off during gala week, I have to give everyone a day off. That's not how this works. I've been here 9 years without missing a shift, which means you've been doing your job. That's not remarkable. That's expected. Then why won't you let me do this one thing? Carolyn's face flushed. Because you're not hearing me. Because you keep pushing when I've already said no. Because service workers who think the rules don't apply to them are exactly the problem with modern work culture. She picked up her phone. Dialed. Lynn. Call an emergency senior staff meeting. 8 a.m. conference room. Yes, now. Elijah's stomach dropped. Ma'am, you're dismissed, Cross. Don't clock out. Be in the conference room at 8. She turned her back to him. The conversation was over. Elijah left. Walked to the break room. Zoe was still asleep on the couch, curled under her jacket, cookbook stacked on the table beside her. He didn't wake her, just sat in the chair across from her and waited. At 7:55, he walked into the conference room. 5 people sat around the table. Lynn from HR, Robert, the operations director, Donna, head of housekeeping, David, the hotel manager, and Carolyn at the head, hands folded, face composed. Sit down, Cross. Elijah sat. The chair felt small, the room felt too bright. Carolyn didn't waste time. I've called this meeting to address a performance issue with Elijah Cross. Cross has been with us for 9 years as head custodian on the night shift. Recently, he's demonstrated a pattern of insubordination and lack of commitment to hotel standards. David's head snapped up. What pattern? Cross has never. He's requested time off during our busiest operational week. When I denied the request, he returned to my office to argue the decision. This morning, he showed up uninvited before business hours to continue that argument. I wasn't arguing, Elijah said quietly. I was explaining. You were challenging my authority. Carolyn's voice stayed level, professional, but her eyes were hard. Service workers don't get to negotiate their schedules based on personal hobbies. They show up when needed, or they find other employment. Lynn shifted uncomfortably. Ms. Ashford Pierce, Cross has an exemplary record, 9 years without incident. This seems like a man who's gotten too comfortable, who thinks tenure means he can coast, who prioritizes his daughter's extracurricular activities over the needs of this property. The words landed like stones. Extracurricular activities. As if Zoe's dream was trivial. As if honoring Simone's memory was something disposable. Elijah's jaw locked, his dark hands pressed flat against his thighs. Carolyn stood. Effective immediately, I'm terminating your employment. You'll receive 2 weeks severance and continuation of benefits for 30 days. Security will escort you from the premises. The room went still. David pushed back from the table. Carolyn, you can't. I can and I am. For asking for a day off, that's for insubordination, for showing up at my office uninvited, for failing to accept a supervisor's decision. Her voice cut through the room like glass. This is my hotel. These are my standards. If you have a problem with that, David, we can discuss your role next. David's mouth closed. He looked at Elijah, helpless. Elijah stood slowly. His movements were careful, controlled. He met Carolyn's eyes and held them. Are you certain? Something about the question made her blink, the way he said it, the steadiness in his voice, like he was giving her one last chance to see something she was missing. I'm certain. Elijah nodded once. I understand. He paused. I hope you find what you're looking for. Then he turned and walked toward the door. Carolyn's hand trembled just slightly as she reached for her phone. Security to conference room B. 2 guards arrived within a minute. They didn't touch Elijah. Just flanked him as he walked through the hallway, down the elevator, across the lobby. Zoe was awake now, standing by the front desk with her backpack, her cookbooks tucked inside. She saw her father walking toward her with security on either side. Her face crumpled. Elijah saw it happen. Saw the exact moment his daughter understood that something terrible had occurred. Her small hands clutched the backpack straps, her eyes filled. And something inside Elijah, something he'd kept buried for 15 years, cracked open like a fault line. Not rage, not yet, but the beginning of it. The kind that starts quiet and builds slow and doesn't stop until it's burned everything to ash. He reached her, knelt down, took her hands in his. "It's okay, baby." But Zoe shook her head. Tears spilled down her cheeks. "They made you leave?" "Yeah." "Because of me? Because I wanted you at the competition?" "No." His voice was firm. "Not because of you. Never because of you." The security guards waited. Patient, but present. Elijah stood, took Zoe's hand, walked with her through the glass doors into the morning light. Behind them, through the lobby windows, Carolyn watched from the 60th floor. She stood at her office window with her tablet in hand, already moving on to the next crisis. She didn't see the way Elijah's shoulders straightened as he walked away. Didn't see the way his grip on his daughter's hand tightened. Didn't see the man who'd spent 9 years invisible finally, quietly, decide that he was done being overlooked. The Busy Bee Cafe smelled like fried chicken and collard greens, like cornbread and sweet tea. Like home, if home had red vinyl booths and gospel music playing low from speakers mounted in the corners. Elijah and Zoe sat in their usual booth near the back. 6 o'clock on a weeknight. The dinner rush was just beginning. Voices and laughter filled the small dining room, mixing with the clatter of plates and the sizzle of the kitchen. Miss Letty had seen them come in. She'd taken one look at Elijah's face and Zoe's red eyes and brought them sweet tea without asking, patted Elijah's shoulder, said nothing, just squeezed once and walked back to the counter. Zoe sat across from him now, her small hands wrapped around a stack of index cards, recipe notes, handwritten in careful print, instructions for griot with pic-lizo measurements, timing, technique reminders. Her eyes were still wet. She wasn't crying anymore, but the tears kept threatening to come back. "I worked on it for so long," she whispered. Elijah reached across the table, took her free hand in both of his dark fingers wrapped around hers, steady and warm. "I know you did, baby. And now you won't be there to see it. I'm sorry. It's not fair." Her voice cracked. "I just wanted you to watch me cook Mama's recipe." The words hit him like a physical thing. He looked down at their joined hands, at the index cards scattered on the table, at his daughter's face, so much like Simone's it made his chest ache. "You don't need me there to do it right," he said quietly. "You got her gift. It's in you already." "How do you know?" "Because I see the way you read those recipes, the way you think about flavor. That's not something you learn from books. That's something you inherit." Zoe looked up at him. "What was she like, Mama?" Elijah's throat tightened. He didn't talk about Simone often. It hurt too much. But his daughter was asking, and after the day they'd had, she deserved an answer. "She was brilliant," he said. "Best cook I ever knew. She could taste a dish once and tell you every ingredient in it, every spice, every temperature it was cooked at." He smiled just slightly. "And she was generous, always feeding people, always making sure everyone around her had enough." "Did she laugh a lot?" "All the time, especially in the kitchen. She said cooking was supposed to be joyful, that if you weren't having fun, the food would know." Zoe's fingers tightened on the index cards. "I wish I remembered her." "Me too." The bell above the door chimed. A man walked in, old, white-haired, moving carefully but with purpose. He wore simple clothes, khakis, and a button-down shirt. No tie, no jewelry except the watch that probably cost more than Elijah made in a year. Harrison Ashford. Elijah recognized him from photos in the hotel lobby. The founder, the legend, supposedly retired, but everyone knew he still pulled strings. Harrison walked to the counter. Miss Letty greeted him like she greeted everyone, with warmth and a menu she knew he wouldn't need. "The usual, Mr. Ashford." "Please, Letty, your fried chicken is still the best in Atlanta. Flattery won't get you extra biscuits, but I appreciate it." Harrison smiled, paid, took his number, then walked to a booth 3 down from Elijah and Zoe, by the window where he could watch the street. Elijah turned back to his daughter. "You know what your mama would say if she was here right now." Zoe shook her head. "She'd say you better make that griot so good the judges cry. And then she'd tell you to hold your head up because you're a St. Jean and St. Jeans don't quit." Zoe's lip trembled. "But I'm a cross." Elijah's breath caught. He'd changed their name 15 years ago, buried the past, kept Zoe safe from the questions and the judgment. But hearing her say it now, hearing her claim the name he'd chosen out of grief and shame, felt like a door closing on something he'd never fully mourned. "Yeah," he said softly, "you're a cross, and crosses don't quit either." Zoe nodded. wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. I wish you could still be there. I know, baby. Me too. She looked down at the recipe cards, started reading aloud. Marinate overnight in bitter orange, garlic, and Scotch bonnet. Fry twice, first at 350, then at 375 for the crisp. She paused. Is that right? The 2 fries? Elijah's jaw tightened. He could see the technique in his mind, could smell it, could hear Simone's voice explaining why the double fry mattered. Yeah, that's right. And the pickles? Do I make it the day before or the same day? Day before. Needs time for the flavors to marry. Marry? Come together, become one thing instead of separate ingredients. Zoe nodded, writing a note on one of the cards. Griot with pickles and plantains. I'm gonna make Mama proud. Her voice broke on the last word. Tears spilled down her cheeks again. 3 booths away, Harrison Ashford's head turned. He'd been sitting quietly, waiting for his order, but he'd heard the word griot, and now he was listening. Elijah saw him looking, saw the recognition in the old man's eyes. Not recognition of a person, recognition of a word, a dish, a memory. Harrison stood, walked slowly toward their booth. His face was kind, cautious. I'm sorry, he said gently. I couldn't help it over here. Did you say griot? Zoe looked up, startled. Elijah's hand tightened on hers. Yes, sir, Zoe said quietly. Harrison's eyes softened. My late wife used to make that. Haitian dish, pork with pickled vegetables. I haven't had it in years. He glanced at the recipe cards. Are you entering a competition? Zoe nodded. Fresh tears welled. I was. But my dad can't come anymore. He lost his job today. Harrison's expression shifted. Something like pain crossed his face. He looked at Elijah then. Really looked. I'm sorry to hear that, Harrison said. May I? He gestured to the booth. Elijah hesitated, then nodded. Harrison slid into the seat beside Zoe, studied the recipe cards with the eye of someone who understood food. This is a beautiful recipe, very traditional. Did you learn it from your father? Zoe nodded. It was my mama's. She died when I was a baby. I'm sorry, Harrison said again. His voice was genuine. That's a hard thing to carry. He looked at Elijah. Do you cook? The question hung in the air. Simple, direct, dangerous. Elijah met the old man's eyes, saw curiosity there, interest, the kind of attention that could unravel everything. I used to, Elijah said quietly. And with those 3 words, 15 years of silence began to crack. Harrison looked at Elijah with new intensity, not intrusive, just curious, the way someone looks at a puzzle they're trying to solve. Where did you learn to cook? He asked. Elijah's fingers tightened on Zoe's hand, here and there. What kind of food? Different styles. Harrison smiled slightly. Patient. French. Italian. American. All of it. And the griot. That's Haitian technique. Not easy to master. Where'd you pick that up? Elijah's jaw worked. He glanced at Zoe, then back to Harrison. My wife was Haitian. Was? She passed. Long time ago. Harrison's face softened. I'm sorry. My wife was Haitian too. That's why I noticed the recipe. She used to make griot every Sunday. He paused. Did you train classically? The question was casual, but it wasn't. Elijah heard the weight behind it. Some. Escoffier, mother sauces, that tradition? Yeah. But you mix it with Creole, Caribbean? Elijah nodded slowly. Harrison leaned back. His eyes never left Elijah's face. That's rare. Most chefs stick to one lane. Classical French guys don't usually cross into island food, too different. But when it's done right, when someone really understands both traditions, it's extraordinary. Elijah said nothing. Around them, the cafe hummed with life. Plates clattering, voices rising and falling, the smell of fried chicken and mac and cheese thick in the air. Harrison kept going. I'm a bit of a food enthusiast. I've eaten at some of the best restaurants in the world, and the ones I remember most are the ones that broke rules, that fused traditions nobody thought belonged together. He glanced at Zoe's recipe cards again. This griot, the way it's written, it's got classical technique all over it, the precision, the timing, but it's still authentic. Still Haitian at its core. Zoe looked up at her father, confused but listening. Where did you work? Harrison asked. His voice was quieter now. As a chef, I mean. Different places. Ever work in New York? The air shifted. Elijah's breath changed rhythm. Just slightly. Just enough. Yeah. Harrison went very still. What part of New York? Manhattan. Which restaurants? Elijah's dark eyes met Harrison's pale ones. Held them. Why are you asking? Because I'm trying to place you. Your technique. Your approach. It's familiar. Harrison's voice dropped. Did you ever work at a place called Maison Étoile? The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was full, heavy, like the moment before thunder. Elijah's face closed completely. His hands went flat on the table. Yeah. Harrison's breath caught. When? 2005 through 2010. What position? Elijah looked at him for a long moment. Then, quietly, head chef, owner. Harrison's face drained of color. His hands started to shake. St. Jean. You're Elijah St. Jean. The name hung between them like a ghost. Zoe looked at her father. Dad. Elijah didn't answer her. His eyes stayed locked on Harrison's. I thought you were dead, Harrison whispered, or disappeared. I looked for you after it happened, but you were gone. No trace. I changed my name, moved south. Harrison's voice cracked. The explosion. Yeah, your wife, Simone. Elijah's jaw locked. He nodded once. Harrison covered his face with his hands. When he spoke again, his voice was barely audible. I own the building. I owned it then. The words detonated like a bomb. Elijah went rigid. Every muscle in his body tensed. His breathing stopped, then started again, shallow and fast. What? The building Maison Étoile was in. It belonged to my holding company, Ashford Properties. Harrison's hands dropped. His face was wet. I didn't know. I knew we owned it, but I didn't connect the name. I didn't know you were you until just now. Elijah stared. His mouth opened, closed. No words came. You sent maintenance requests, Harrison continued, his voice breaking, about the gas lines. You said there was a smell, a leak. You sent 3 requests in 2 months. They ignored me. My property manager falsified the inspection records, checked boxes that were never checked, paid off an inspector to sign off without actually looking. Harrison's voice was shaking now. When the explosion happened, my lawyers buried me behind corporate structures, limited liability, shell companies. I never had to testify, never had to face anyone. Elijah's hands curled into fists on the table. His breathing was loud now, ragged. You were the landlord. Yes. You're the reason the records disappeared. Yes. You're the reason I couldn't prove it wasn't my fault. Harrison's face crumpled. Yes. Zoe looked between them, her eyes wide, her small hand still in her father's. Dad, what's happening? Elijah didn't answer, couldn't answer. 15 years of grief and rage and guilt were rising in his chest like a flood. His hands trembled, his vision blurred. I've carried this for 15 years, Harrison said. Tears ran down his face openly now. Other diners were starting to notice. I knew what happened. I knew my people ignored your requests. I knew they covered it up. But I didn't know who you were. I didn't know your name. I didn't know you had a daughter. He looked at Zoe. I didn't know Simone had a child. She was pregnant when she died, Elijah said. His voice was flat, empty. 8 months. They saved Zoe. Simone didn't make it. Harrison made a sound like a wounded animal. The cafe felt too small, too loud, too bright. Elijah needed air, needed space, needed to not be sitting across from the man who destroyed his life. But he couldn't move, couldn't stand, couldn't do anything except sit there, frozen, while the past 15 years rewrote themselves in his mind. Not his fault, not negligence, not poor judgment. Someone else's greed, someone else's corruption, someone else's crime. And the man responsible was sitting across from him weeping. I'm sorry, Harrison whispered. I know that's not enough. I know it doesn't fix anything. But I'm sorry. I've been sorry for 15 years. I just didn't know how to find you to say it. Elijah's breath came in short bursts. His chest felt too tight. His throat burned. Zoe's small voice cut through the noise. Dad? Who's St. Jean? Elijah looked down at his daughter, at her confused face, her frightened eyes, her hand gripping his like a lifeline. And he realized she'd never heard his real name before. Harrison Ashford's suite sat on the top floor of the Grandview. Elijah and Zoe stood outside the door at 10 a.m., both exhausted from a sleepless night. Elijah had spent hours staring at the ceiling of their apartment, replaying the conversation at the cafe. 15 years of believing he'd failed. 15 years of carrying the weight of 5 deaths. And now, in one evening, everything had shifted. Not his fault, Never his fault. But the knowledge didn't erase the grief, didn't bring Simone back, didn't undo the lost years. He knocked. "Come in." The suite was beautiful. Understated luxury, soft carpet, wide windows overlooking the city, a sitting area with leather couches, a small dining table. Harrison sat in an armchair, dressed simply, his white hair combed back. His eyes were red. He hadn't slept either. "Thank you for coming," Harrison said. He stood slowly, offered his hand. Elijah shook it. His grip was firm, controlled. "This is Zoe," Elijah said quietly. Harrison's face softened. He knelt down, eye level with the girl. "Hello, Zoe. I'm Harrison." Zoe looked at her father. Elijah nodded. She turned back to Harrison. "Hi. I knew your mama. Not well. But I ate at her restaurant once. It was the best meal I ever had." Zoe's eyes widened slightly. "Really? Really?" She was extraordinary. Harrison stood and gestured to the couch. "Please, sit." They sat. Harrison settled back into the armchair across from them. For a moment, no one spoke. The silence wasn't empty. It was full of everything that needed to be said and nothing adequate to say it. "I'm going to be direct," Harrison said finally. "I owe you more than I can ever repay, but I want to try." He leaned forward. "I'm offering you a formal apology. Public. On the record. I'm offering financial restitution for the legal costs, the lost income, everything you went through because of my company's negligence. And I'm offering you a position as executive chef at a new restaurant I've been developing at the Grandview. Full creative control. Your name. Your vision." Elijah's jaw tightened. He looked down at his hands, dark skin against the light fabric of the couch. Hands that used to create, hands that had mopped floors for 9 years. "I don't want your money," he said quietly. Harrison blinked. "I'm sorry?" "The apology, yes. The public acknowledgement of what happened, yes. But I don't want payment. That's not why I'm here." "Then what do you want?" Elijah looked up, met Harrison's eyes. "I want my daughter to see me stand up for what's right. I want her to know her father didn't fail, that her mother didn't die because of something I did. That's what I want." Harrison's throat worked. He nodded slowly. "Then help me do that. Not for money, for Simone, for Zoe." He paused. "What if we build something together? A restaurant that honors your wife's memory. Creole cuisine, French-Haitian fusion. The food you and Simone created together. You design the menu, mentor the team, rebuild your reputation on your own terms. I haven't cooked in 15 years. I know, I can't." Elijah's voice cracked just slightly. "Every time I smell meat searing, I'm back on that street in New York. I hear the explosion. I see the smoke. I can't go back to that." Harrison leaned back, studied him. "What if you didn't go back? What if you went forward, to something new, something that wasn't about the past, something that was about Zoe's future?" Zoe's small voice cut through the tension. "Mama would want you to cook again." Elijah turned to look at his daughter. She sat beside him, her hands folded in her lap, her eyes serious. "You don't know that, baby." "Yes, I do. You said she loved cooking. You said she thought it was joyful. She wouldn't want you to stop because of what happened to her." The words hit him like a physical blow. He closed his eyes, breathed. When he opened them, he looked at Harrison. "One condition. Name it. Your daughter, Carolyn. She needs to be told the truth, face to face, before anything happens. I won't accept this behind her back." Harrison's expression tightened. "Carolyn won't take this well. I know. She's already paranoid about her position, about me questioning her leadership. This will feel like a direct attack. I understand. But she fired me 2 days ago. If I'm coming back to her hotel in a new role, she deserves to know why, and she deserves to hear it from you." Harrison sat quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded. "You're right." He stood, walked to the desk, picked up his phone. "I'll set it up." He made 3 calls. The first to his assistant, the second to the hotel's PR director, the third to someone named Marcus. When he hung up, he turned back to Elijah. "Tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. My private office here at the hotel. Carolyn, you, me, our executive chef Marcus, and Lynn from PR. We'll tell her together." Elijah nodded. Harrison walked back to the couch, sat on the edge of the coffee table facing them. "I need you to understand something. Carolyn is difficult. She's insecure. She's fighting to prove herself. And when she feels threatened, she fights dirty. I'm not afraid of her. You should be. She has power, connections, and she's my daughter. No matter what happens, I won't let her destroy you. But it's going to get ugly before it gets better." Elijah looked at Zoe, then back at Harrison. I've spent 15 years hiding. I'm done with that. Harrison's eyes welled. He extended his hand. Then we have an agreement. Elijah shook it. By noon, the meeting was confirmed. Carolyn, Elijah, Harrison, Marcus, Lynn. Tomorrow at 9. Elijah and Zoe left the suite and walked through the Grandview lobby together. Past the desk where security had escorted him out 2 days ago. Past the elevators he'd cleaned 1,000 times. Past the marble and crystal that had watched him disappear into the background for 9 years. A security guard nodded at him. Morning Cross. Elijah nodded back. But he didn't feel like Cross anymore. For the first time in 15 years, he felt like St. Jean. And tomorrow, Carolyn Ashford Pierce was going to find out exactly what that meant. Carolyn Ashford Pierce walked into her father's office at 9 a.m. sharp, tablet in hand, heels clicking on hardwood. She'd been summoned for a meeting about operational improvements. Her father had said it was urgent. She stopped in the doorway. Elijah Cross sat in a chair by the window. The janitor she'd fired 3 days ago. Next to him sat Marcus Chen, the Grandview's executive chef. Across from them, Lynn Harper from PR. And at the head of the table, her father, hands folded, face unreadable. What is this? Carolyn's voice was ice. Close the door, please, Harrison said. She didn't move. Why is a terminated employee in this meeting? Close the door, Carolyn. She stepped inside, let the door swing shut behind her, stayed standing. I'm waiting for an explanation. Harrison gestured to an empty chair. Sit down. I'll stand. Suit yourself. Harrison looked at her evenly. Elijah Cross is going to be the culinary consultant for our new signature restaurant project. The words hung in the air like smoke. Carolyn's face flushed. Excuse me? You heard me. This is a joke. It's not. She turned to Lynn. Did you know about this? Lynn nodded carefully. Mr. Ashford briefed me yesterday. Carolyn's hands tightened on her tablet. You telling me you want to hire the janitor I just fired to consult on a restaurant? Our restaurant? Yes, Harrison said. This is insane. You're undermining my authority. You're making me look incompetent in front of my own staff. I'm making a business decision without consulting me. I'm the GM of this property, and I'm the owner. Harrison's voice stayed calm, level, but there was steel underneath. Marcus explained the concept. Marcus cleared his throat. He was in his 40s, Asian, talented but careful. He glanced at Carolyn, then at Harrison. We're developing a Creole fine dining experience, French-Haitian fusion, something Atlanta doesn't have at this level, high-end technique with authentic cultural roots. Carolyn's laugh was sharp. And you think the janitor can deliver that? I know he can, Marcus said quietly. Based on what? Did he mop the kitchen floor with particular flair? Harrison's jaw tightened. Carolyn, no. She pointed at Elijah. He hadn't moved, hadn't spoken, just sat there with that same calm she'd seen when she fired him. That same infuriating composure. There are hundreds of qualified chefs in the city, Culinary Institute graduates, James Beard nominees, people with actual credentials. And you want to hire him? Yes. Why? Harrison looked at Elijah, then back at his daughter. Because this janitor is Elijah St. Jean. The name meant nothing to her. She stared. Who? Maison Étoile, New York, 2005 through 2010. Recognition flickered in Marcus's eyes. He sat forward. Carolyn shook her head. I don't. 3 Michelin stars, Harrison continued. Youngest black chef to earn that distinction. He redefined French Creole fusion. Food critics called him a genius. His voice dropped. And he was better at his craft than you've ever been at yours. The words struck like a fist. Carolyn's face went white, then red. You're comparing me to a janitor. I'm comparing you to a master chef who lost everything because of my company's negligence. What are you talking about? Harrison explained. The gas leak, the ignored maintenance requests, the falsified inspection records, the explosion that killed 5 people, including Elijah's wife, the lawsuits, the corporate lawyers that buried him, the guilt Harrison had carried for 15 years. Carolyn listened, her expression shifting from anger to confusion to calculation. When Harrison finished, she turned to Elijah, really looked at him for the first time. Saw something in his dark eyes she'd missed before. Depth, history, pain. So you're saying he's the chef responsible for 5 deaths, she said slowly. And you want to put him in charge of our restaurant? Elijah's hands curled slightly, but he said nothing. He's not responsible, Harrison said. My company is. I am. The press won't see it that way. I don't care what the press sees. Carolyn's mind raced. She could feel the ground shifting beneath her, could see her father looking at this man with something she'd never earned: respect, admiration, hope. This is a mistake, she said. Her voice shook slightly. A massive, career-ending mistake. And if you do this, I'll resign. That's your choice. I'm serious. So am I. She looked around the room. Lynn wouldn't meet her eyes. Marcus was staring at Elijah like he'd just discovered gold. Her father's expression was implacable. She played her last card. If you do this, I'll go to the media. I'll tell them everything. About the explosion, about the negligence, about this disgraced chef exploiting his daughter to get a job. Her voice gained confidence. I'll make sure everyone knows exactly who Elijah St. Jean really is. The room went very still. Harrison stood slowly, walked to the window, looked out at Atlanta spread beneath them. When he turned back, his face was harder than Carolyn had ever seen it. If you do that, he said quietly, I'll release the sealed maintenance records. I'll hold a press conference admitting my company's negligence. I'll apologize publicly to Elijah and to the families of the victims. And I'll make it very clear that the only person trying to destroy an innocent man is my own daughter. Carolyn's breath caught. Your choice, Carolyn. She looked at her father, at the man who'd given her everything, the name, the position, the hotel, and she realized, with a clarity that felt like drowning, that he would choose this janitor over her. She grabbed her tablet, walked to the door, stopped with her hand on the handle. You're going to regret this. Then she left. The door clicked shut. Silence filled the office. Lynn exhaled slowly. Should we prepare a statement? Harrison shook his head. Give her 24 hours to cool down. But Elijah, still sitting by the window, knew better. He'd seen the look in Carolyn's eyes as she left. That wasn't someone cooling down. That was someone planning war. Carolyn didn't go home that night. She went to her office, closed the door, made calls. The first one was to Marcus Reed, a food blogger who'd built his career tearing down restaurants. He answered on the third ring. Marcus, Carolyn Ashford Pierce. I have a story for you. By midnight, the first post was live. By morning, it had spread to 3 major food sites and the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. The headline read, Disgraced Chef Resurfaces After 15 Years. The article was surgical. It laid out the explosion at Maison Étoile, 5 deaths including Simone St. Jean, the lawsuits that accused Elijah of ignoring maintenance warnings, the criminal negligence allegations that were never proven but never disproven. And then, the twist, Elijah Cross, night janitor at the Grandview Hotel, was actually Elijah St. Jean. Now he was using his 9-year-old daughter's cooking competition story to manipulate his way into a consulting position at a luxury hotel restaurant. Photos accompanied the text, Maison Étoile in ruins, smoke rising from the wreckage, a younger Elijah in chef's whites, intense and focused. And beside it, a recent photo someone had taken of him in his gray custodian uniform, pushing a cleaning cart. The contrast was devastating. Elijah's phone started ringing at 6 a.m. He didn't answer. By 7, reporters were outside his apartment building. By 8, the school had called Zoe was being sent home early. He picked her up at 9. Her eyes were red. Her teacher walked her to the car, wouldn't quite meet Elijah's gaze. What happened? Elijah asked once they were driving. Zoe's voice was small. Kids were saying things. What kind of things? That you killed people. That you lied about Mama. That you're using me to get a job. Elijah's hands tightened on the steering wheel. His jaw locked. He pulled into a parking lot, put the car in park, turned to face his daughter. None of that is true. I know. Your mama died because someone else didn't do their job, not because of me. I know, Dad. But she was crying anyway, and Elijah realized that knowing the truth didn't protect her from the cruelty of people who didn't. They sat in the car for 20 minutes, neither of them speaking, just breathing. Elijah's phone rang. Harrison's name on the screen. He answered. Yeah. Have you seen it? Harrison's voice was tight. Yeah. I'm fixing this. Right now. Don't do anything. Don't talk to anyone. Just stay where you are. Harrison. Trust me. The line went dead. Harrison Ashford stood in front of a wall of cameras at 2 p.m. that afternoon. His legal team flanked him on one side, Lynn from PR on the other. Behind them, a screen displayed documents, maintenance requests, inspection records, internal emails. My name is Harrison Ashford, he began. His voice was steady, clear. I'm here to tell you the truth about what happened at Maison Étoile 15 years ago. The room went silent. He explained everything. his holding company's ownership of the building, Elijah's 3 documented requests about the gas smell, the property manager who falsified inspection records to avoid repair costs, the corporate lawyers who buried everything behind shell companies when the explosion happened, the guilt he'd carried for 15 years. Elijah St. Jean is not a negligent chef, Harrison said. His voice broke slightly. He's a victim of my company's negligence, of my failure to properly oversee my properties, of a system that protected me and destroyed him. He paused. Let the weight of it settle. Today, I'm releasing all sealed maintenance records related to the Maison Étoile property. I'm publicly apologizing to Mr. Reacher, St. Jean, and to the families of the victims. And I'm announcing a new restaurant at the Grandview Hotel. It will be called Simone's, after Mr. St. Jean's late wife. Part of the profits will fund a culinary scholarship for children who've lost parents. Questions erupted. Cameras flashed. Harrison answered everyone. Didn't hide. Didn't deflect. Just stood there and took responsibility for 15 years of silence. The story shifted within hours. Hotel magnate admits cover-up, makes amends to wronged chef. Ashford Properties releases evidence clearing chef in deadly explosion. From janitor to chef, the redemption of Elijah St. Jean. Carolyn was summoned to her father's office the next morning. The board was present. 6 men and women in expensive suits, faces impassive. Harrison didn't waste time. You leaked confidential information to the press. You attempted to destroy a man's reputation. You acted against the interests of this company. Carolyn's face flushed. I was protecting. You were protecting yourself, at the expense of an innocent man and his daughter. He's not innocent. 5 people died. Because of our negligence, not his. Harrison's voice was steel. You're being reassigned to our Savannah property. Effective immediately. That's a demotion. That's a consequence. Carolyn looked at the board. No one met her eyes. She turned back to her father. And who's taking over the Grandview? David. The hotel manager. The man who'd tried to object when she fired Elijah. The man who'd watched her build her career and said nothing until it was too late. This is a mistake, she said quietly. No, Harrison said. This is justice. She left without another word. 2 days later, Elijah stood in the empty kitchen space that would become Simone's. It was just a shell right now. Bare walls, concrete floors, exposed pipes and wiring. But he could see it, could feel it. The stoves, the stations, the paths where plates would be assembled, the heat and noise and controlled chaos of a working kitchen. Zoe stood beside him, her small hand in his. She'd been quiet since the press conference, processing everything, the truth about her mother, the lies people had told, the way the world could shift in a single day. You really gonna cook here? She asked. Yeah. Every day? Most days. She looked up at him. Are you scared? Elijah thought about it. The smell of gas, the sound of the explosion. 15 years of running from kitchens. 15 years of believing he'd failed. Yeah, he said. I'm scared. But you're doing it anyway. Yeah. Zoe nodded, squeezed his hand. Mama would be proud. Elijah's throat tightened. He looked down at his daughter, 9 years old, standing in an empty kitchen, believing in him when the world had spent 2 days trying to tear him down. Yeah, he whispered. She would. They stood there together in the silence, father and daughter, staring at the empty space that would soon hold everything they'd lost and everything they were about to build. 6 months later, Simone's was full. The dining room glowed warm in the evening light. Creole-inspired decor burnt orange walls, dark wood tables, brass fixtures that caught the candlelight. The smell of braised meat and spices and fresh bread filled the air. Voices rose and fell in easy conversation. Glasses clinked. Silverware touched china. Elijah stood at the pass in the kitchen, his dark hands moving with precision over plates. Seared duck breast, skin crisp and golden. Haitian spiced jus pooled around it. Pickled vegetables bright with color. Plantain puree smooth as silk. He moved like he'd never stopped cooking. Like the 15 years between Maison Étoile and now had never happened. But they had, and his hands still trembled sometimes. And the smell of gas still made him freeze. The pain was there. Just bearable now. Pick up, table 7, Marcus called from the hotline. Elijah nodded, wiped the edge of a plate, sent it out. Across the kitchen, Zoe worked the salad station under supervision. 10 years old now, her natural hair pulled back in a bun, her movements careful and focused. She'd been coming in on weekends for 3 months, learning, watching, absorbing everything the way Simone used to. Her griot with pickles had won the junior competition. Full scholarship to a summer culinary program. She'd stood on stage with her recipe cards and talked about her mother with a clarity that made Elijah's chest ache. "How's the arugula?" Marcus asked her. "Good. Dressed light. Lemon and olive oil. Perfect. Send it." She plated it herself, handed it to the expediter, looked over at her father. He smiled. She smiled back. The dining room was packed. Press in the corner taking notes, food critics at center tables, faces neutral but forks moving. Donors Harrison had invited, Atlanta's culinary elite. And at the main table near the window, a group of people Elijah had never met but knew by name. The families of the Maison Étoile victims. Harrison had flown them in, offered to cover their expenses. Some had refused, but 4 families had come. 2 couples, 3 children now grown. 1 elderly mother who'd lost her son in the explosion. Harrison sat with them now, his white hair bright under the chandelier, his face lined with age and remorse. They talked quietly, ate slowly. It wasn't forgiveness exactly, but it was something. A step, an acknowledgement, a shared grief finally spoken aloud. Elijah had met them earlier, before service, shook their hands, looked them in the eyes, said the only words that mattered, "I'm sorry. I wish I could have stopped it." The elderly mother had touched his face. "You lost her too," she'd said softly. "We know it wasn't your fault." Now they sat in his restaurant eating food he'd made, and the weight he'd carried for 15 years felt just slightly lighter. The kitchen hummed with controlled energy. Orders came in, plates went out, the rhythm of service like a heartbeat. At 8:30, David appeared at the kitchen door. The new GM of the Grandview, 47 now, graying at the temples, carrying himself with the quiet confidence of a man who'd earned his position rather than inherited it. He caught Elijah's eye, gestured toward the dining room. Elijah wiped his hands, stepped away from the pass, followed David's gaze. Carolyn Ashford Pierce stood at the host stand, alone, no entourage, no designer suit, just simple clothes, her blonde hair pulled back, her face bare of the armor she used to wear. She looked smaller somehow, uncertain. David looked at Elijah. "What do you want me to do?" Elijah studied her through the window between kitchen and dining room, saw the way she stood apart from the crowd, the way her hands gripped her purse, the way she scanned the room like she was looking for an exit. "Cedar," Elijah said quietly. David nodded, disappeared into the dining room. Carolyn was led to a corner table. Alone, away from the main crowd, she sat carefully, looked at the menu without really seeing it. Elijah returned to the pass, called for Marcus. "I need you to take over for 10 minutes. "Everything okay?" "Yeah, just something I need to do." He walked to the prep station, selected a plate, began to build it himself, the signature dish, the one that had been featured in every review. Seared duck breast with Haitian spiced jus, pickled vegetables, plantain puree. Simone's recipe, perfected over months of testing. The dish that carried her memory forward. He plated it with the same care he'd given every plate that night, wiped the edges, checked the presentation. Then he picked it up and walked into the dining room. The restaurant went quieter as he passed, not silent, just aware. People recognized him. The chef had disappeared, the man at the center of the story. He stopped at Carolyn's table, set the plate in front of her without speaking. She looked up. Her eyes were red. "I didn't order. I know." He stood there a moment. She stared at the plate, at the food arranged with precision and care, at the evidence of everything she'd tried to destroy. She picked up her fork, cut a piece of the duck, brought it to her mouth. The taste hit her like a wave. Tears came, not delicate, not controlled, just honest grief spilling over. She set down the fork, covered her mouth with her hand. Her shoulders shook. "I'm sorry," she whispered. Elijah nodded once. He didn't speak, didn't need to, just stood there a moment acknowledging her, then turned and walked back to the kitchen. Service ended at 10. The last plates went out. The kitchen cleaned down. The staff filtered out one by one, exhausted and satisfied. Elijah and Zoe were the last ones there. They stood together by the pass, looking at the empty kitchen, gleaming steel, clean stations, the quiet after the storm. On the wall above the expo station, a photograph hung in a simple frame. Simone in her chef's whites, laughing, her dark eyes bright with joy. Elijah had found it in an old box, had it restored, hung it where he could see it every night. He reached up, touched the frame briefly, just his fingertips against the glass. "You think she'd like it?" Zoe asked. Yeah, baby, I think she would. Zoe took his hand, squeezed it. They stood there in the silence, father and daughter, surrounded by the evidence of everything they'd built and everything they'd survived. The kitchen held them gently. The photograph watched over them. And somewhere, in the space between memory and hope, Simone smiled. Because redemption begins when the powerful choose truth over reputation, and dignity is never lost when you spend it protecting those you love.